Namaskar. Welcome to Dharma Series, episode 11. And today our topic of discussion is the Saṃskāras. So these are the consecration ceremonies performed in ancient Indian religion. We are going to discuss an introduction to the Saṃskāras in this video. So please stay tuned for more upcoming videos where we will discuss the prenatal and postnatal sanskaras. For today, we are only going to introduce to the consecration ceremonies performed in Hinduism. As you know, in this video series, we discuss about the religious aspects or spiritual aspects of ancient India. So this is one of the most important spiritual aspect, that is the consecration ceremonies performed in Hinduism. So without any delay, let's begin. Introduction. Understanding the Saṃskāras. So here we will see what are the things we are going to discuss in this presentation. Meaning and concept. We begin by understanding the literal and philosophical sense of sanskar. So what is the literal and philosophical basis of the samskars which are performed in Hinduism? And the meaning of the term is refinement, which leads to something being perfect or consecration, and its interpretation by scholars like Śabara and Jaimini in Pūrva-Mīmāṃsā Sūtras. So all these things, all these sources will be analyzed in detail. Evolution and sources. This study traces how samskaras are recognized in the Vedic and post-Vedic ages, cited in Gautama, Apastambha, Vasishtha, and Tantravārtika, revealing their ritual and ethnical significance. So, we will study the ritualistic and ethical significance of the process, and the sources we will use are Gautama, Apastamba, Vasishtha, and Tantravārtika. So all these things will reveal the Vedic and post-Vedic ages regarding the study of the Saṃskāras. We examine how samskaras span in human life from conception to death. So, what are the consecration ceremonies performed in human life from birth to death, or from conception to death, which is pre-birth? And it has been outlined by Manu Yajnavalkya and later on compiled by great scholar Kane into 27 rites, of which 10 major ones became universally accepted. So Kane, from the various sources available, compiled the Saṃskāras into 27 rites, and out of these 27, 10 have been universally accepted. Social dimensions. The presentation highlights who could perform these rites, especially distinctions among Varnas, gender, and Vedic mantra privileges, reflecting ancient social hierarchy and ritual purity. So, we will study the social restrictions and privileges regarding the samskaras, who were allowed to perform according to the varnas and gender, and also what are the privileges of Vedic mantras, and how does all these things reflect the social hierarchy and ritual purity in the Indian spiritual field. Structure of studies. Finally, we will explore the sanskaras in five detailed sections, their definition and origin slides. So, origin and definition will be discussed from the slides 1 to 3, and their variations and rules will be discussed in slides 4 and 5. So, let's begin with the core introduction to the sanskaras. So, what are the meaning of the Saṃskāras and what are the early references regarding this practice? Primary sense. Sanskar literally means making perfect or refining or polishing, often translated as consecration. So the English translation of the term samskara is consecration. But it is not the exact thing because Sanskrit, when translated to English, becomes very difficult not only to pronounce but also to bring out the exact essence of the meaning. So, samskar literally means to make something perfect or to polish something into its final form, final perfect form. Śabara's definition, which is mentioned in Pūrva-Mīmāṃsā Sūtra. So, samskaro nama sa bhavati yasmin jate padartho bhavati yogaha. So, this exactly has been quoted from the Pūrva-Mīmāṃsā Sūtra according to the writing of Śabara. And it means a samskar is that which, when performed, renders a thing fit. So, a sanskar brings fitness into a particular thing. So, when we perform sanskar, that particular thing becomes fit for spiritual use. Terminology note: the term was not current in Vedic age. Some Saṃskāras existed then, but the word itself was not used. So these practices of making perfect or refining something into its ultimate spiritual form was being done during the Vedic age, but the word samskara was not used at that time. So the word itself was not used, but some of the rituals related to the Sanskaras were done even in the Vedic age. Griha-sūtras. So the word Samskar does not occur in the Griha-sūtra. So in the Griha-sūtras also this word does not find its place. Dharma-sūtras mentions it appears in Gautama and Apastamba and Vasishtha. So these are the Dharma-sūtras where we get mention of the word Samskar. Jaimini and Pūrva-Mīmāṃsā Sutra usage. Jaimini employs the word several times. In Pūrva-Mīmāṃsā in 6.1.35, it explicitly denotes Upanayana, identified as one of the most important sanskaras. So, Upanayana or initiation ceremony, one of the initiation ceremony, has been mentioned in Purva Mimamsa Sutra by Jaimini. So, it is one of the most important sanskar. Hence, Jaimini and Purva-Mīmāṃsā Sutra uses this practice or uses this word in general. Terminological caution. Later literature broadened the usage, but early citations above anchor its technical sense and show its gradual textual emergence. So the practice of the sanskaras were used even before the word samskar began to be used in texts and in daily practices. Nature, function, and religious frame. So, what is the nature of the sanskar? What are the functions performed according to the samskaras, and how is it important in the religion sphere? Functional definition Tantravārtika on Pūrva-Mīmāṃsā Sutra. Samskaras are actions or rites that impart fitness or yogyata to persons or objects. So, to every objects or every person has its own spiritual significance, and that can only be attained with the performance of sanskars, which are actions or rites which bring yogyata or fitness to a person. Yogyata does not mean physical fitness, it means spiritual fitness and spiritual acceptance. So, yogyata is a term which is very loosely translated into fitness in English, but the significance of or the essence of yogyata is much more than mere physical fitness. Two kinds of fitness. So how can an object or a person become yogya? So The first process is by removal of taints or dosha or sins. So a person has some kinds of negativity in himself or herself. So those should be removed. And that is the first criteria of fitness or yogyata. That is by removal of dosha or sins or by generation of fresh positive qualities. So before we go to the second step, which involves generation of positive qualities, at first the negative qualities from one's life must be removed properly. Role of tapas, austerity, specifically brings about removal of taints aligning to with type 1. So removal of taints is the first type of fitness, and that can be done with extreme tapas or austerity, means differentiating oneself from the materialistic aspects of life, going away from luxury or going away from any kinds of materialistic achievements. So that helps in the removal of taints or sins. Religious valence of acts. Hindus treat most permissible social acts as meritorious and surround them with religious significance. So, most meritorious social acts are surrounded with religious significance. Conversely, prohibited acts are viewed as sinful or irreligious. So, positive acts have a religious significance while negative acts are considered sinful or irreligious. Language of dharma. In such moral religious evaluations, the term religion or dharma is widely invoked. So, such religious evaluation is done on the basis of dharma. So, whatever is positive is considered to be dharmic, and whatever is irreligious is considered to be adharmic. Ritual requirements. During the performance of most samskar, Vedic mantras had to be chanted and certain Vedic rites performed. So Vedic mantras were compulsory and certain Vedic rituals had to be done, underscoring their scriptural grounding and sacral tone. So Vedic mantras and Vedic way of doing the ritual was very significant. Eligibility, gender, and Varna debates. So, what are the eligibility criterias for the performance of the Samskaras, and how does it vary according to gender and the four Varnas? Primary subjects. The Samskaras discussed were intended chiefly for males of the upper three Varnas, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. So the Samskaras, most of the Samskaras were to be done only by the male members of the upper three Varnas. Women access. Women's rights to sanskar were limited in practice within this normative framework. So, women's rights to the samskaras were very much limited, and thus only the males of the upper three varnas were actually eligible for the performance of the varnas, for the performance of the sanskaras. Shudra eligibility and dispute. Authorities disagreed on Shudra's right to Samskar. So there are different authorities which bring out a controversy regarding whether the Shudras were eligible for the Samskaras or not. Liberal view, late text resolution, permitted several sanskaras for a Shudra without Vedic mantras. So, Shudras could perform several sanskaras, but they were not allowed to perform the Vedic mantras. So, their sanskaras or their purification or polishing ceremonies were to be done without the Vedic mantras. And this concession is applied to good Shudras only. So Sat Sudras means honest and the Shudras who cling to the Vedic way of life. Only they were permitted to the Sanskaras, that too without any kind of Vedic mantras. Restrictive view held that marriage is the only sanskar allowed to a Shudra. So, marriage is the only sanskar allowed to a Shudra means a Shudra among all the sanskaras present could only perform the sanskar of marriage. The stricter rule was associated with low asat sutras. So, this was mainly done because many of the sutras were considered asat or dishonest. Regional variation. The same late text notes that rules could differ from one country, religion, or another. So, from one portion of India, the rules regarding sanskaras vary a lot between different portions of India, acknowledging their plural legal ritual customs across India. So it is a pluralistic view regarding the sanskaras. Everywhere it can be done in different ways. And that is the greatest virtue of the religion, that everywhere people can do it according to their own practical sense or own practical benefits. Net implication. Access to Saṃskāras was hierarchically structured by Varna, gender, moral standing, which is honest or dishonest, and locality, means where you live, with Vedic mantra use a key dividing line. So, what kind of sanskaras will be done varied according to the location, varied according to gender, even varied according to moral grounds, and the main dividing line was usage of the Vedic mantras. Range authorities and core list of sanskaras. So what are the ranges, authorities, and the main sanskaras that was done by the ancient Indians? Lifespan coverage. Sanskaras were conceived to mark a man's life from conception to death. So, from the conceivement of life to the death of a person, every stages of life required a sanskar to be done. So, structuring every key transition with ritual acts. So, every key transition of a man's life had to be done with some kind of ritual consecration ceremonies. Disagreement among texts. Ancient authorities are not unanimous about the full set. Individual lists differ in content and count. So, ancient authorities are not in agreement about the full set of the consecration ceremonies or the sanskaras. So individual lists vary from place to place, individual lists vary from different scholars to scholars. So there are disagreements among texts regarding what sanskaras are to be done and how is it to be done. So that is also not a negative thing. This disagreement is not a negative thing. It is a positive thing that we were liberal to many forms of rules or many forms of authorities. Antyeshti attestation. So, Antyeshti attestation, what did it mean? It was the last sanskar or the funeral rites is explicitly mentioned only by Manu and Yajnavalkya, showing uneven canonization. So, the funeral rites to be conducted after the death of a person has only been mentioned by Manu and Yajnavalkya. So that is an uneven distribution about the authority of the Sanskaras in ancient texts. M. Kane's tally. Scholar M. Kane compiled a list of 27 Sanskaras. So Kane, by the study of different uh, ancient authorities or by the study of different ancient texts, took over 27 Saṃskāras as has been mentioned in ancient history, and he synthesized them according to different parameters. At last, he agreed on commonly agreed Saṃskāras, that is, 10 Saṃskāras which are universally agreed upon. So, those mentioned by all or most authorities include Garbhādhāna, conception, Pūm which is fetus right, then Simantonayana, which is parting of hair, Jatakarma, birth right, Namakarana, which is naming ceremony, Annaprasana, first rice feeding ceremony, Chura Shiromandana or Churakarana, which is first tonsure, then Upanayana, initiation, Keshanta Godana, which is first saving with gift of a cow, then comes Vivāha, which is marriage. So these are the 10 Saṃskāras which has been commonly mentioned in almost all authorities of ancient India. Canonical takeaway: while expanded enumerations exist, the items above form the core intersect consensus that most dharma authorities recognized. So there are many samskaras mentioned in different authorities or in different texts. There are expanded enumerations of the list, but these 10 sanskaras can be told as the Saṃskāras which have been agreed upon by most authorities. Performance rule, Varna, gender, and grouping. So, what are the rules to perform these Saṃskāras? Vedic mantra requirement for voice, which is for the male child of the upper three Varnas. Samskar from Jata Karma to Churakarna were to be performed with Vedic mantras. So, the first 9 Sanskaras were to be performed with Vedic mantras, and it was to be done only for the male child of the upper three varnas, that is Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. Girls' rights and boys' only rights. So, for girls, Vedic mantra usage was not prescribed for most childhood rights. So, for the most childhood rights, Vedic mantra usage were not to be used by the girls, or rights related to the girls did not have any kind of Vedic mantra usage. Upanayana Keshanta were boys only. So these were the ceremonies which were only reserved for boys. Vivaha employed Vedic mantras for all. So Vedic mantras during Vivaha could be performed by all boys, girls, and also sometimes by the Sat Sudras. Obligatory stage for Dvijas. So from Upanayana onward, the Sanskaras were obligatory for male Dvijas, which means the twice born caste, that is Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. So Upanayana was the initiation ceremony or the initiation ceremony to the second life, which was uh, spiritual birth. So Upanayana ceremony was to be reserved only for the Tija people, that is the twice born people of the upper three Varnas. Life path options after training. After completing Brahmacharya, a Dvija might marry or remain a Naishthika Brahmachari or become a Sannyasin, reflecting alternate ideals. So after the completion of the student phase or the ashram of brahmacharya, a dvija may marry or remain a sannyasi or become a naishthika brahmachari. So these are the options one has after the completion of studenthood. Three practical groups. For study, the samskaras may be grouped as prenatal and postnatal. So prenatal sanskaras have a separate list, postnatal sanskaras have another list, and marriage is an entirely different aspect of sanskar. So these three practical groups will be discussed in our upcoming videos. Operational insight. Performance norms turn on varna, gender, stage of life, and mantra usage, explaining why identical names could entail different procedures across subjects. So, a samskar may have a particular name, that is Upanayana, but Upanayana done by Brahmins, Upanayana done by Kshatriyas, Upanayana done by Vaishyas will be different. The marriage rituals will also be different. So, even if the name of the sanskar is the same, it will differ according to the mantra usage, stage of life, varna, and gender. So those are the performance rules which varies according to varna, gender, and grouping. Now we will go through the sources I used in this study. You can go through all the sources for more detailed descriptions. Also, you can use it as a verification process of the video. Even though very few people watch my video till the last, but if you watch it, then I provide references for everything that I have discussed. Pūrva-Mīmāṃsā Sūtras, used as foundational course, especially sections 3.1.3, 3.8.9, and 6.1.35, where Śabara and Jaimini define Sanskar and its ritual philosophical meaning. Dharma-sūtras. References include Gautama, Avastambha, and Vasishtha Dharma-sūtras, which describe early Saṃskāras and their social context in pre-classical Hindu law. Smṛtis. Important citations from Manusmriti and Yajnavalkya Smriti have been used for the detailed mention of rites such as Antyeshti and Upanayana. Tantravārtika commentary, consulted for its exposition on the dual nature of fitness, yogyata, and the role of tapas in purification process of Saṃskāras. Śabara Vaishya provides a textual definition of samskar as the act that renders a person or object spiritually and ritually fit. Kane's History of Dharma Shastra, Volume 2, used for the systematic enumeration of 27 Saṃskāras and comparative interpretation among the authorities. A concise history of ancient India served as the main modern reference, connecting scriptural data with historical development of Saṃskāras and Shraddha traditions. Vedic and Griha Sutra reference, used to authenticate ritual procedures, mantra usage, and varna based eligibility as per early Vedic custom. Later commentators and scholars included for insights on gender distinctions, regional variations, and evaluation of Saṃskāra system in post-Vedic Hindu society. So that was all about the introduction to the Samskar ceremonies done in ancient India. In our next video, we are going to discuss about the prenatal Sanskaras. There we are going to discuss each of the Sanskaras in detail. Then again we are going to discuss the postnatal Sanskaras. We are also going to go into the procedures of marriage and later on proceed towards Shraddha ceremony. So all these things will be discussed in great detail. In this playlist, you can go through the videos to understand the spiritual significance of the oldest religion in humanity. So stay tuned for more upcoming videos. Once again, thank you for your love and support.